then adopt the bylaws, provided that the alteration does not alter the use, increase the density, or without the owner's consent, decrease the density of any area from that originally specified in the bylaw. Okay. We have a presentation from our planning department. Go for it, Daniel.
Sure, thank you, Murray. So we're here tonight to discuss two bylaws. So Bylaw 459 to amend the official community plan and Bylaw 460 to amend the land use bylaw. So background purpose of these bylaws, the property owners of 391 Salal Road wish to subdivide their property into two different properties in the current land use regulations in the OCP, and the land use bylaw would not permit the subdivision. It's currently designated R1 rural, so with a 2 hectare minimum lot size in the OCP, and rural residential 3 in the land use bylaw. So the bylaws would amend the OCP land use designation to the R3 residential 1 hectare designation, and the land use bylaw to the rural residential 3B zone. As a part of the application, the property owners proposed a trail right of way be dedicated to pass from Salal Road to the Crown Land to the west of the property. Just Salal Road, adjacent to Josephine Lake, off of Sunset Road. So as I mentioned, it's currently in the R1 designation in the OCP, and currently in the RR3 zone in the land use bylaw in the United States property. And as I mentioned, Bylaw 459 would amend that land use designation to the R3 residential 1 hectare, and the land use bylaw to the RR3B zone, again with the 1 hectare lot size. So this came before Council in November 2017. For introduction, Council referred the rezoning application to 2 of our advisory committees. It came back to Council April 23rd. With the bylaws, the Council gave the bylaws first reading, and again referred the bylaws out to committees. And finally came back in July 23rd, where they received second reading and was referred to a public hearing. The EPC gave recommendations to Council twice. So in February of 26th, 2018, they recommend support the rezoning application and the proposed subdivision community amenity, and they ensure location of the trail easement. And on May 23rd, the Advisory Planning Commission again supported the bylaws at that meeting. And the Parks, Trails, Greenways Advisory Committee made a recommendation February 20th. They recommended that the proposed trail easement is beneficial to the municipality, and that the easement be wider than 3 meters in width. And then finally, as of September 26th, 1 letter was received, and I see the agenda following preparing this PowerPoint. We've had 3 more that are in your agenda and 2 more that are on table items.
Very succinct of you, sir. Okay, what we got, Tyler?
Right. When you come up, please state your name and your address. First up, we have Mr. Mark Evans.
Good evening, Mayor. I'm Mark Evans, 992 Dorman Road. I'm the Vice Chair of the Parks, Trails, and Greenways Advisory Committee. I would like to address 2 issues that have been raised regarding the 391 Salal subdivision application. First is the question of the value of the amenity that is being offered in exchange for approval. As the Vice Chair of the Parks Committee, I can attest to having reviewed the issue. Currently, there is a statutory right-of-way that runs between 391 Salal and the adjacent lot to the south. Unfortunately, this right-of-way is not appropriate in terms of trail development. The access from Salal Road is very steep and constructed of rocky road base and would require stairs to be built. Also, the right-of-way runs through wetland areas and would require boardwalks and bridges. For these reasons, any trail construction would be costly, as would future maintenance. Conversely, the land being offered by the Lords is very accessible. In fact, they've been out using it as a trail for years. You would have a low cost of trail construction and maintenance. Further, when coupled with the existing right-of-way, this area would protect the wetland, would provide the public with the opportunity to experience this marvelous area with little impact and create a meaningful greenway for wildlife, connecting Josephine Lake with the Apodaca Ecological Reserve. This is an important connection between Salal Road and the Crown Land, the Veterans Park area, Forest Ridge Road, and could be a key component in a future connection to the Callens Point area, all identified in the Parks Plan as desirable connections. I believe this is a valuable amenity and opportunity for the municipality. an opportunity we may not get again. The second issue surrounding this application is one of variance to the OCP and land use bylaws, and I want to be clear that I'm no longer speaking as the vice chair of the Parks Committee, but as a private citizen. It is important to note that 391 Salal is larger than the other lots on Salal Road, because when those lots were subdivided in the year 2000, it had already been sold and therefore kept whole. I applaud the public for scrutinizing changes to the OCP and land use bylaws, but in this case, the change to the lot is not out of step with what has already occurred in the area. Therefore, I believe the advantages of subdivision outweigh the drawbacks, and I ask council to approve this application. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Mark.
Mr. Peter Frickson?
Good evening, Peter Frickson, 741 Carter Road. And I just like to preface my comments with that I fully am in sympathy with the owners of the property who do wish to subdivide and rezone the property. On the surface, it seems like it's quite simple. This is a much larger lot than the other ones. The other one's got consideration for that, and it hardly increases the density on the island. It seems reasonable. However, I live on a 10-acre lot, and I'm not allowed to subdivide it because of the zoning and strictures within the community plan. And I attended the APC meeting and was quite surprised that the actual underlying planning principles were not referenced at all. And so I went back and looked at the policies and sent a couple of letters into you guys, so I hope that they receive proper consideration. The thing is that if you look at policy 112, it just says rural development proposals will only be considered by the municipality if they contribute significant amenities that support identified community aspirations. So you have to measure to see whether this is a significant amenity relative to the value of the uplift that they are receiving. The second thing is when you look at the policies with regard to the Cowan Point land. So the CDA 1, and this is policy 148, it specifies that there be a maximum of 15 lots with an average density of 1 lot per 2 hectares. So I didn't see anything in the application which seeks to amend policy 148. So it seems that there's a dissonance there. In fact, it's in contrary to and I would state as being not permissible. The other thing is when you look at some of the other things like density reallocation, which is policies 113 to 115, you go, it's neither in a density donor area nor in a density receiving area. So what is the rationale for going ahead with this? So I don't think it meets the requirements, the legal requirements for rezoning or for an alteration of the OCP, unless all of those other things are addressed at that time. The remedy that I think is one to pursue is to get what one might call a significant amenity. And I just simply don't think that the offering of a trail right-of-way, and that's all that they're offering, is adequate, and it is not insignificant, but it's not sufficiently significant. There are many other things that could be done, and while I recognize that council is bound and can't just start asking for these things directly, they can be offered by a property owner. So my recommendation is to take this no further in its current form and invite a reapplication. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter.
Ms. Eileen?
Eileen Lord, 391 Salal Road, joint homeowner as such. I'd like to address some comments that have been made about our application. When we moved to Salal Road in 2002, there were 2 houses on the street. On our side, there were 3 vacant 5-acre lots. the Josephine Lake side was entirely empty. To aid the sale of these lots, an agreement had been reached to change the zoning to allow subdivision, and riparian zones were introduced around Josephine Lake and on our side, close to Frank Creek. 2 of the vacant lots on our side were divided into 2.5 acre lots. Our lot was not rezoned because it had already been sold. And also it formed a strata with the adjoining lot to the north. We shared a 9 square meter piece of land. Subsequently, the land issue was resolved and the owner of the vacant lot applied to rezone and then subdivide. In retrospect, we probably should have rezoned at that time too, but we were still relatively new to Bowen Island and we didn't think about it. Now, on our side of the street, there are 7 2.5 acre lots, and we are an anomaly with being 6 acres. Subdividing, I don't think is really going to increase rural density. We did not try to rush our application through before the election, as had been suggested. We started the process over a year ago and expected to be at this stage some months ago. We are not greedy landowners out to make a quick buck. We are homeowners in our 70s who are finding it increasingly difficult to look after our property. We would like to subdivide to be able to build a home there and live a simpler life. The Parks and Trails Committee has visited our property twice and seems happy with our offer to provide a pathway through our land to Crown land. This pathway would cut off a substantial corner of our property because the terrain there does not permit a more direct route. So it is quite an undertaking. And finally, we have no intention of destroying any pristine wilderness. The area where we would build our house was cleared around 20 years ago. It is a haven for Scotch broom, which is a noxious invasive weed. Our neighbours would be totally delighted to see it replaced by a home and garden. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Mr. Stacy Beamer.
Hi there. Stacy
Hello,
Beamer.
Stacy.
511 Cowan Road. I am speaking on behalf of my parents, the owners of the property. We have some questions associated with the application. The first one, and most obvious in looking through the reports that have come through in the last years, a couple places where you talk about contacting neighbors and no comments received from neighbors. And we found out about this last week in the newspaper. So there's been no, this just fell out of the sky. And we didn't know anything about it till last week. So there was no, we are direct neighbors. We share a significant boundary with the Lords. And so with that in mind, I had a couple of questions and comments. Firstly, on this application, we're wondering, it's hard, we don't know where this lot line is. All we see are pictures of a 6-acre parcel, and we wonder where is this proposed new lot boundary, and where exactly is this proposed new right-of-way. We wholeheartedly support public access to the Crown lands wherever possible. It's nice to see council kind of trying to clean up some of these trust-era oversights associated with some of these developments. One of the things we know, and that is a significant concern, is that right now the trail that connects the end of Forest Ridge Road and then runs to the north trespasses through a small stretch of private property at Forest Ridge and then goes 100 meters through the Crown land and then trespasses, depending on which trail you're taking, more than half a kilometer through our property. So in the last 3 years that we've owned the property, we've had 1 police incident, we've had a couple minor thefts, we've had people on our land declaring that it's public and they can come through there. And you know, we would like to see, I personally, I would love to see a much more significant trail network on Bowen Island and wholeheartedly support the creation of that. But it seems like the group has possibly been walking on our property, and there's comments about the trails going through, and there's a couple of drawings that are in the package. There's one that shows kind of a dotted line randomly across in one spot, and another one that shows some other dotted lines, and that are actually on the wrong property, showing trails on an adjacent property that are actually on ours, in fact. And so our concern is that, yes, you know, maybe there, in the perfect world, that trail from Salal that went through to Apodaca, or that curved up and around and back down to the east of Jennings Place and connected down into the middle of the island would be absolutely brilliant. But the idea of making this trail that comes and carries on with, you know, encouraging people to come, or we want to be clear that there is no public access through the property. We welcome our neighbors and friends, and we've been reasonable about it, but we have had multiple incidents in the last 3 years where it's been a problem, right? And so it seemed to me unclear in the documents that we want to make sure that the public clearly understands that's private property. As far as our opinion about the subdivision of the property and its density that's outside the OCP, and that's no small affair. And at the end of the day, you know, again, 100% support the access to the ground land, provided it's a right-of-way that you could actually use, and we could actually ultimately build a trail in that spot. Support that 100%. But I don't think the creation of a piece of land that's going to ultimately be valued in today's market $600,000, $700,000. I really respectfully submit that that's not enough of an amenity, and that is not in keeping with the spirit of that original rezoning and what happened across the way. So our question is, how come we weren't talked to? Where are the boundaries going to actually be? You know, again, we're not against the subdivision of the property at all. I think that the amenity is not significant enough, and maybe there's trails that could be built, maybe that, you know, so other things could be done, you know. And if the amenity met the criteria of a significant amenity that benefits Bowen Island, then we would have no problem supporting the subdivision of the property. I just think that we need to stop giving away density. It's creating significant value, and we don't get a benefit from that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Riddell?
Hi, I'm David Riddle. I live at 1279 Buchanan Road, and I'm speaking in support of this. I know the area from way before any of the subdivisions, and the way that I used to hike through those trails, which exist to this day and such. I don't do it anymore. So
You're welcome to.
But my wife and I, Kathy Buchanan, would like to state our strong support for this rezoning. We feel the plan is within the neighborhood size and character, where the vast majority of properties are 2.5 acres, 1 hectare in size. Years ago, when the area we rezoned and re-subdivided, the applicants helped by giving their approvals and signing papers and working with their neighbors. Now it's time to assist them as they move into their next stage of life, let them rezone and create a new place for them to age at home. The applicant has enlarged the park/trail area. If I could just stop there. In my past as a realtor, that subdivision, there were this little trail that went from Salal, narrow little piece of nothing you could walk on, to Crown Land, and then poof, you were there. Oh, and then there was one that took you out to Forest Ridge. Doesn't exist. You can't get from Forest Ridge without going through landscape properties. So having to enlarge the trail to get to the Crown Land and back into the forest, this is wonderful. The trail connections were never finalized or constructed. Now's the time for Bowen Island to obtain a true connection to the Crown Lands. We strongly urge council to support and approve this rezoning. And that's by Kathy Buchanan and Dave Riddle. Thank you.
Thank you.
And finally, Claudio Fisher.
I don't know the procedure, I withdraw my name, I don't know the procedure, that's why I'm always different.
All right. Okay. So, let me make sure I get this right. So I'm calling for public input, verbal and written submissions. Yes. Would you like to speak again? Okay.
I'll be very brief once again, Peter Clinton. I just wanted to supplement that with a couple of comments. First was that I was involved, I was on council at the time of the original subdivision, and I was also around when the original, what I call highway subdivision was done, which was done by, after Praxis collapsed in the early 90s. And so this was pre-municipality, and witness to that are the large turnarounds and the very wide roads and the oversized lots, but with it, nothing else. So there were easy for fire trucks to turn around, but no trails. There was no protection of Josephine Lane. So what's different about this application is that there is no environmental peril at risk. It is why that was not included at the original time. That was, they essentially had a 50-meter setback, 30 meter or 50 meter, I think it's 50 meter setback from the edge of Josephine Lake, which is highly significant. The other thing is the downside of public use. I just think there has to be very close controls over that. On our property, it's there's a trail which is listed in the 101 hikes for BC. For Greater Mainland, we get people coming through all the time with dogs at large who absolutely insist that they are within their rights to be there. So this is a problem in trail building, and I absolutely concur with the other speakers that this is delightful to have a trail built, and I don't want my comments to be construed that I'm against the subdivision. I just think that you have to correct the legalities of it so that it meets, so it doesn't offend the OCP. And the other thing is, I think that we need to have something more commensurate with the value associated with the uplift. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Okay, so I'm calling again for any further written or verbal submissions. Calling a second time for any further submissions. Calling a third time for any written or verbal submissions. Okay, there being no more submissions, is there anybody on council who wishes a further report from planning before we pass a recommendation here? Okay, so the recommendation is that all written and verbal submissions, so I can make sure I've got the right one. Okay, here we go. That all written and verbal submissions regarding bylaw number 459-2018, cited as Bowen Island Municipal Official Community Plan Amendment bylaw number 459-2018, and bylaw number 460-2018, cited as Bowen Island Municipality Land Use bylaw number 57-2002, amendment bylaw number 460-2018, up to and including October 1st, 2018, be received, and that the public hearing is adjourned. You pass that? Seconded, all in favor? Done deal. That was done. Okay, we're just going to take a couple of minutes for Tyler to reset, and then the next public